So, welcome back. I'm George Gunn. I was introduced earlier. We now have what I hope will be a much more interactive session. It's a debate. It's a debate on the style of the Oxford Union. Now, there have been some very famous debates in the Oxford Union, so this one has a lot to compete with. We want a lot of audience participation. The motion, or the proposition as it's properly called, is in order to thrive, the veterinary profession must become truly customer-centric. No, there's an S. It's the veterinary professions must become truly customer-centric. That's the proposition. And we have, the way this goes is we have the first proposer who speaks for maybe 5 to 7 minutes, and I'll introduce the speakers in a minute, talks for the proposition, and then we have the first opposer, who talks for a similar length of time. Then I'll involve the audience, so I guess there'll be some fairly strong opinions in the audience. And remember, we're trying to sway one side of the debate to come to the other side. And so feel free to be liberal with your comments. We have a 15 to 20-minute discussion with the audience, and then we'll go back to the second proposer and the second opposer. And if we feel it necessary at the end, we can have the first proposers up again to do a rebuttal on either side. If we feel that's necessary, I'll leave that a little bit up to the proposers and the opposers. We have a vote at the beginning, and we have a vote at the end, and the result depends on the change in votes. So before I go into the vote, I'll introduce the speakers. They're fairly famous in the profession, so I'll be very brief. Gudrun Ravetz, Liverpool graduate. I'm not Liverpool. Postgrad business certificate and a law diploma. That's not bad. Past president of the BVA and SPIVs, small animal practice and industry, and currently head veterinary officer at Simply Health Professionals. Her seconder is Ebony Escalona, equine and companion animal vet, vet med educator, mentor, speaker, has a fairly strong activity on Facebook, although I've never seen it because I'm not on Facebook, and I'm told has given a lot of support to a number of vets. Opposition, two worthies of the profession, I think you'd say. Iain Richards, Liverpool, mixed practice, Cumbria, certificate of sheep health and welfare, left practice in 2010, did a master's in conservation medicine. How many of you have done that? That's very unusual. And he now has a consultancy on diseased livestock and its interactions with the whole environment, including humans and wildlife. And Lynne Hill, 20 years a practitioner, moved to the Royal Veterinary College and Bristol Vet College to run clinical services, past president of the BSAVA, done a fair bit with the Royal College on the council, and very well known in veterinary circles. So that sets up the debate. Before we go to Gudrun, I need to have a vote. Now, given that this is the Royal College, I obviously am completely impartial, but as the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons is in the room, the officers are in the room, this will be extremely accurate because they have to make everything extremely accurate and extremely fair. So I will make Anthony stand up in a minute and count the votes. You can have three possibilities on this at this stage. One is you can support the proposition. Two is that you do not support it. And third is you don't have an opinion. And of course, all are legitimate at this stage, but at the end, I will expect you all to be in the first two categories. So let's start. Who supports the motion as it stands? God, they're slow, these regulators, aren't they? I would just have taken a picture and then counted the arms, but that's too innovative, maybe. Right, who does not support the motion? This is easier.
Oh, it's going to be bad enough as it was.
You are allowed to put two hands up.
Right. And a foot.
And I won't go for the third one because we have enough now. So I will open the floor to Gudrun.
Thank you. So that was slightly better than the Labour Party, but it will take Labour Party voting so that we win next time. I can deal with that kind of style of voting. But what I want to do from the beginning is I want to get it out there. The veterinary profession is a welfare-focused profession. The BVA, through their Animal Welfare Strategy 2016, coming out of the Vet Futures, publicly acclaimed that we are a welfare-focused profession. And that was taken and adopted by the profession. So that's not the argument here. It is not about welfare versus the customer. It's not about us supplying the customer needs and understanding and enabling them at the expense of welfare. We all know our oath. That is what we do. So what are we arguing here? What we're arguing is that actually by being customer-centric, and by that I mean we're understanding the customer's needs and we're enabling them. And that enablement gives us, as veterinary professionals, the ability to treat the patients in front of us. And that gives us the enabler for welfare. So my argument is going to be that what we're doing is enabling welfare. If we look at some of the questions we've had today and some of the discussions, it's been about being customer-centric. It's been about being there to enable a customer to make a decision. The discussion just before was around a question was asked before, should we interpret our own x-rays? We should be asking the client that. That's about being customer-centric. We should be asking the client, I can do this, it will cost you this, this is the information, what is your need? Where do you want to go? What can I do for you to help enable you as a customer? That's being customer-centric. It's not just about us making that decision because we're not paternalistic anymore. So that's the customer-centric bit. That's the definition of customer-centric we're going to go. What's thrive? Because we're here saying we want to be customer-centric so the veterinary profession can truly thrive. Veterinary professions can truly thrive. So what's thriving? For me, thriving is about having an economically viable workplace and business to be able to provide animal health and welfare. We need to be realistic. If we are not economically viable, personally economically viable, and as a business economically viable, we cannot provide for our oath. We just can't do it. It's not a dirty word. And the other thing is being professional and personally viable. And what's that? That is about me being fulfilled to uphold my oath. That's about me having pride at work. It's also about having a positive workplace to be in. And we know, we've done loads of studies on this, the environment in which you work in is about the humans that you work with. And it's also about the animals that you treat and the outcomes that you can get according to your professional oath. And my argument is that if we are customer-centric, if we build that relationship with our customers around their needs and we enable them, we have a better relationship with them. We have a better working day. We can get better outcomes for welfare. And we can provide economically viable businesses and for ourselves. As I said before, we're not paternalistic anymore. We might once have been. But actually, our owners, animal keepers, they are not passive recipients of our information. They're actively on the journey with us. And we need to engage them in that journey. We might have the information in front of us. But you know what? How many times do they come to us, whether that's on farm, whether that's in a research setting, whether that's a pet owner, they come to us with more information than we have. And what is about being customer-centric is being part of that journey with them. It's about sharing our knowledge that we have, interpreting the knowledge that they have for the animal in front of them. It is not being paternalistic. It is not choosing that we do it for them because we believe it's the right thing to do. And we can't treat our clients as a homogenous mass. We can't say to them, I vaccinated this animal in this way, the animal before it came into you, so your animal needs that too. My practice protocol is the vaccination is this, and the next animal that comes in, the vaccination is that. I'm a pet owner. I'm also a vet. When I walk into the veterinary practice that I use, I walk in as an individual, and I'm different than you. I'm different than you. I have a different need. I have a different experience. My day has been different. What I want for my pet is different. The vaccination I want for my pet is an individual need. But how many times are we customer-centric enough to make them understand their needs? Not to make them understand us, actually to enable us to understand them. It's about being customer-centric. If we look at the PDSA poll report 2019 came out, I think it was this week. And one of the things they found is significant drop in first vaccination in dogs. Okay? So we all go, why is that? And we all get really upset. It's skepticism, it's the skepticism from human medicine, it's creeping into us. Why do people not see that? They haven't seen distemper, blah, 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 blah. If we look at some of the reasons that PDSA has identified, none of them say, I don't want to vaccinate my dog because I don't care about its health. I don't want to vaccinate its dog because I don't really like it. There's various reasons, but none of them are saying that. If we had a conversation with these people, I think their need would be the same as ours. I want a healthy dog. But they're turning to other sources of information. And they're not turning to us as the evidence-based professional because we're not giving them the space in our vaccination clinic because we're saying your dog needs the vaccination the person before you had. Your dog needs this vaccination the person after you is going to get. That is not being customer-centric. If we were, I suspect we could get vaccination rates up. That would enable welfare. I think we also have to accept we're not in a privileged position of being the only stakeholders in the room. There are an awful lot of animal health and welfare stakeholders out there. We are in a privileged position that only we can carry out an act of veterinary surgery, and that is a privilege. Unless it's obviously a minor procedure and it becomes under an exemption orders. But there's lots of others out there who we need to work with and do work with. But clients, animal owners and keepers have a choice on where they go. And we've seen today that choice is global. That choice is opening up because the choice is the knowledge and the information that they can take. If we look at another debate on pet foods, and so we look at, I've done a lot of media stuff on vegan pet foods, on vegetarian pet foods, because people are making a lifestyle choice based on their ethics and their morals and sustainability. Now, we can come at this with lots of evidence of why that isn't right. We can come at this from a university standpoint, from what we've learned of why you shouldn't do this. But if we were customer-centric and we said to those people, why are you doing this? What is it behind there? What's your need for your animal? Your need for your animal is to be healthy. But your need for your animal is also to be part of your ethics and morals, part of what you believe in is sustainability. We can have a dialogue with people. We can bring them along. We can educate. And it's about being customer-centric. And that brings in the animal welfare. But this is not about blindly doing anything a customer wants. Because at the end of the day, we're a welfare-focused profession. We have an oath. That doesn't change by being customer-centric. And if people aren't with us, if for that small outlier, and we worry about the outlier, and that's okay, we should worry about the outlier, who out of malice or intent wishes to harm their animal. And that happens. It's a tiny proportion. There is animal welfare laws out there to protect that. And it is up to us to enact those and work with relevant authorities. But if we're not customer-centric in the first place, we never see those people because they've never come to us because we shouted at them the first time round. And those people we genuinely don't see. So I would suggest we don't worry about the outliers. We don't stop being customer-centric because we're worried about the outlier that might do something against welfare and we never told them off about it. What we do is we enable the majority to meet their needs and we enable welfare. And the outliers will be caught up. through welfare. So I think when next time we see people, it's not about being a homogeneous mass. It's about taking them as an individual to find out what they need and want. And I started with the Animal Welfare Strategy 2015 because I think it is a superb document. And we talked about being animal welfare centred. But what it ends with is quite interesting. It's about economic viability. It says, by working with clients and ensuring that veterinary activities are economically viable, veterinary surgeons are able to achieve their primary aim of improving animal welfare. And I talked about economic viability at the beginning. If we're not economically viable in our workplace, we can't do anything. And being economically viable in whatever business you are in is appealing to your customer. It's having a relationship with your customer, that they trust you, that they want to come back to you, that they want to spend the money, that they value you. We know the profession has high trust ratings. We know we have slightly lower value ratings. So trust is around 94%, value is around 70%. They trust us to fix the leg. They may not value what we do in the process of doing it. Being customer-centric, we have that engagement, we have that relationship, we entrust the value with them. And that makes us economically viable. And economically viable means we can carry on being welfare-focused. I mentioned the Vet Futures at the beginning. I just want to end with something from Vet Futures. So within the Vet Futures, it says, the literature points to a mismatch between the value vets attached to some aspects of their service and the value that clients attribute to the same offering. A mismatch. We think one thing, clients want another. If we're customer-centric, the first thing we do is understand them and enable them. It also says that vets themselves have been found to have a lack of confidence in their ability to meet the expectations of pet owners. So we need to work on this. We talk about soft skills, and we've heard it today. It's not soft skills, it's essential skills. Our universities talk about this. CPDs talk about it. Associations talk about it. And those essential skills are all about communicating with the customer. They're all about being customer-centric. And how do we engage with the customer? So everyone else gets it. So I'd kind of say, we're having this debate. Everyone else gets it. They're providing the learning to be able to do that. And at the end point of this paragraph within the Vet Futures, it says, this leads us to conclude that the veterinary professions need better to understand and respond to the needs of clients. That is being customer-centric. That was the Vet Futures report in 2016 that the profession adopted. We have already adopted that we are customer-centric. We've already adopted we're a welfare-focused profession. Those two go hand in hand. So I'd say that being customer-centric is about understanding and enabling customer needs. It's not about blindly providing everything that they want, because we have an oath. Being customer-centric is an enabler of health and welfare. It's also an enabler of economic viability. It's an enabler of positive working environments, and it's an enabler of personal professional satisfaction. So ultimately, I'd say that being customer-centric allows a welfare-focused veterinary profession to thrive. Thank you.
Iain.
Okay, I've got the tough one now, haven't I, facing this tough audience. I think we've seen the recent collapse of Thomas Cook, and those of you with slightly longer memories will remember the disappearance of HMV, Blockbuster and Woolworth from our high streets. And listening to Gudrun, it's really actually quite difficult to oppose this motion, which obviously isn't a good place for me to start. But I can oppose it, and not least by considering the impact that being very customer-centric will actually have on the lives of our professionals, be it vets or nurses. There's a few examples that I'll run through. We could start perhaps by considering what the gold standard, if I can use that loaded phrase, of customer-centric care would be, which would be a top hotel, the one that panders to every last customer whim. The customer can have whatever they want, whenever they want it. And if we take that whenever they want it into the veterinary profession, and we've heard a little bit about that this morning, that means the vet being available at all times. With the levels of mental health that we've got, is that something we truly want? We've heard there's a recruitment crisis in practice. I'm wondering if that recruitment crisis is perhaps driven by being too customer-centric. and being open at somewhat unrealistic times. And I don't accept that changing the consulting room for a screen will make any difference, because the time that you do that consultation is still going to be the same. I'm also concerned that being very customer-centric might have on our clinical judgment. Because to be customer-centric, and I do take what Gudrun said, we focus on the customer needs. It's very difficult not to get drawn into the customer's desires. And that is hard territory. The small animal world in particular has got its little problems, raw feeding, the panaceas of cannabis oil and turmeric. The equine world is not much better, and it has to be said the farm world can follow suit sometimes. And if you go along with those needs and talk to clients and talk to customers, it's very difficult to properly oppose those views, because you come across as a little bit paternalistic. Screening, for instance, we heard about it earlier on. Screening is really popular for customers. If you look at the NHS, mammography and prostate-specific antigen are very popular screenings to have. And depending on your person you look at, depending on their demographic and their age, you might actually be screening for a completely benign disease, one that will not affect the patient until they die somewhat later of a completely unrelated disease, yet they're hugely popular. If you were to withdraw them, there'd be an outcry. They're fairly crude. It can be difficult to oppose those, because by opposing them, you kind of come across somewhat as rude. It's a tough one. I'll stay with the NHS, because they're a good example of customer-centric organisation, particularly when they involve customer or patient focus groups. Now, they're a great idea. Bring the patients in, get them to talk about their experiences. For instance, I've been on a nice committee recently. I got bitten by a dog, that's why I was there. Get them to talk about those experiences, how they can add to the healthcare, what they actually need, the differences the hospital can make. That sounds a great idea. Except when you look at an awful lot of these focus groups, the people who are there are single-issue people. They're there to complain about one thing, about their one thing that affected just them or their auntie. And they don't look at the whole issue. A local issue that we've got is there's a campaign to bring radiotherapy to the Kendal Hospital, very small hospital. The idea of bringing the radiotherapy there is that people don't have to undergo such a long journey. That's a nice idea. That's a customer-centric idea. But how much difference will it actually make to the treatment of those people? The difference in moving them to Kendal compared to down to Preston is going to be about an hour at the most. Yes, it's tiring, but the real exhaustion comes from the radiotherapy and not from the inconvenience of the journey. Yet our local MP would have us go customer-centric and build the radiotherapy unit. The outcomes would be exactly the same. I've so far not mentioned what I think is the biggest error in this motion, and that's the use of the word customer. Now, this isn't me being arcane and snobby that professions have clients and trades have customers, although there is some validity in that. It's that by becoming too customer-centric, we turn what we do into a commodity. Our profession is actually built on trust. Gudrun said it herself. Vets are absolutely integral in society. We go beyond the consulting room, the farmyard, or the equine yard. There are things that we do with food safety, animal welfare during filming, and typically, of course, certification. That trust can be built on one single fortuitous event, that miraculous carving with a live calf that you get in your first week of your mixed practice, which can make you with that farmer for life. That's trust. But for most of us, that trust is built over time. The time that we take to talk to our clients, to understand them, their animals, and for them to understand that we act in the interests of both. That comes with two principal factors. Firstly, it's that relationship we have, that vet-animal-client relationship, which is built up over a long period of time. And secondly, and I think this is really important and why we can't be too customer-centric, we're a self-regulating profession. We actually put our livelihoods on the line and are happy to do it. that we are judged by our actions, judged so much that if we get it wrong, we can lose that livelihood. And that's the trust that we have. That level of trust, I would say, is unsurpassed in society today. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is why I think being too customer-centric will cause our profession not to thrive, but actually to wither. Thank you.
So, two very clear sets of arguments. First of all, is there any points of clarification you would like to get from Gudrun or Iain on anything that they said? Yeah, one at the back.
My main thing is, so when we initially had the vote, I didn't vote either way, really, because I was unclear as to what this motion was actually trying to say, and I think I still am, because both arguments are extremely valid, and I agree actually with both Gudrun and Iain's points of view, and I think actually what Gudrun is talking about is involving the client in joint decision making, which I think few of us would argue against, and that's not, to me, customer-centric. I also object to the term customer, but I think that just worries me a little bit, because this debate is actually between two not opposing sides. It's not clear. I just don't think they're coming at it from actually opposing sides, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, completely understand. Would either of you like to comment on that?
So I think what
Microphone.
I'm trying to say, customer-centric to me in the business term is an understanding and enabling a customer's needs. So it is bringing them as a relationship. It is a true relationship. It's different than customer wants. So if you look at the Ford car, what people wanted was faster horses, faster horse-drawn carriages. What he found, what the need was to get from A to B faster. So we're not talking about wants, we're talking about needs. So when the need to get my pet better because it's my, it's my love, it's my whatever, but by better is different than what I see as better. My need is different than your need. So to me, it is about taking needs. And I think the vaccination thing is the prime example. We don't talk to customers about need around vaccination. We've made a decision for them that this is the protocol you get. And we're in a time of skepticism to vaccinations, and we know that is overflowing from human medicine to veterinary medicine. If we took the time to be more customer-centric and understand the need of that person in front of us, and then base the treatment around the need, remembering we're welfare-focused, I think we wouldn't be seeing those dropping rates.
My query is just with the wording and the motion, because I think that's not necessarily what I would take to mean.
No, fair enough.
So it's not that I'm disagreeing at all with what you're suggesting. I'm just talking about joint decision making.
So what would be your view of customer-centric, I suppose, because that might help us to...
Customer-centric, I think, is more, I don't know, a bit like, yes, the customer is always right, sort of a shop sort of centred idea, the customer's always right, or a hotel, yes. Whereas to me, it's more a joint decision making involving the client with you and talking through different options, and you should always involve them at all times, and I completely agree with that. Just to me, I think that notion doesn't word the way I would interpret what you're saying. That's all.
Fair enough. No.
Take your point. Do you want to say anything, Iain?
Not particularly. I didn't like the phrasing of the debate either, I have to say, and the customer-centric I took, and I asked a few people, sorry, John, I asked a few people involved in customer work, and they came back to me saying, yes, it's the ultimate of the customer is always right, and that's quite a dangerous slope to go down for an evidence-based profession.
Okay, thank you. I think, does David have one, and then you...
Well, can I just ask, and I'll stand so maybe you get... So is it clinically...
Hang on a sec. Hang on. On you go. I was just waiting for the mic.
The question is this clinically customer-centric? Because that's what we're talking about. Or is it whether I can actually go to them? Or it's comfortable for me to see them? Because I've just learned clinically. So, with regards to the question, is that in order to thrive the veterinary profession must become more customer-centric, whether it, with regards to clinically, that's providing, making these animals healthy, just with regards to health. Say, for example, yes, that the client choose whether we read the x-rays or they.
It's all aspects.
No, so it's about understanding the customer's needs and enabling those. So I might have a customer in front of me that actually money isn't the object to them, and I know that need, and then I can discuss with them, it will be this much if I send your x-rays away. To another client, they may trust me wholeheartedly and would rather I did do that and would rather it was cheaper for them. It's about understanding the needs of a diabetic dog where the owner has rheumatoid arthritis and actually physically can't inject them. So it's their need as much as mine clinically.
Lynne wants to.
Then I need to put the question
That way, because it's can't be about.
Maybe I can answer.
Yeah.
So I think it's very ambiguous, and I talked to Anthony about it and said, does he really think me to stand up and say I'm not customer focused or my businesses have never been customer focused? Of course, that's different. It says truly customer centric, and I think that's the key is in the word truly, because if we're truly, we think of nothing else except customers, and that I think is different, and that's certainly not something that I'm going to argue that they're the only people in the debate. But what I also want to challenge Gudrun, she's talking about, understanding each client and what each client wants. What we're talking about here is selling. We're talking about benefits and features of what we're selling. Each client will have a different benefit for what we're going to sell them. So we're going to sell vaccination, annual vaccination, boosters or whatever, in one way to one client and to another way in another client, because the features will be the same, but the benefits to that client will be different. And so, of course, we should treat our clients differently. They have different needs, they have different wants, but then we also shouldn't get confused with what they say they want and what they'll actually do. So clients' behaviours are not always what they say they want or what they need. And I think it's so intricate. There's so many different parts to this. But for me, the debate is about being truly customer-centric, because we're all should be customer-centric at some level or other if we're in this profession.
If there's controversy about the motion, we've definitely got the right motion. David, I think you had a mic.
Thank you. Question for the panel, if I may. If the profession hasn't been truly, and I don't mean solely customer-centric, but truly customer-centric for the last 120 years, what has made the profession thrive over the last 120 years if it hasn't been customer-centric in the past?
Privilege under the Veterinary Surgeons Act. So we have a privilege to carry out acts of veterinary surgery at the moment, unless it's obviously minor and it's under an exemption order or there's Schedule 3. So that has given us the privilege. It would be interesting to see if you took that away or you took bits of that away, what would happen? Because we see that now. We see where you can go and get other advice on the internet about things that aren't an act of veterinary surgery, and people are becoming more enabled about their pet's health. Whether that's evidence-based or not is a whole different argument. But I think we're in a very privileged position. And actually, the more there has been competition around veterinary practices, we see that people do move, actually. There is less loyalty to one veterinary practice than there ever was. And people stay because of people. Yes, there is a great outcome, but if we've got the most amazing surgeon who cannot engage, who is not customer-centric, who cannot speak to the person, how do you know as a pet owner what's happening behind the scenes? You have no idea. So it is about people buying from people, and that's the industry we are in. That's the art of what we do, and the science we almost do behind the scenes.
Thanks, Gudrun. Iain?
How did we thrive for the last 120 years? Trust. What I said last. People trust us to do the job right, because we usually do, because we care, and they trust us to be honest. I think it's as simple as that, David.
Okay. Yes, certainly.
We've also thrived because we've had the privilege of living until recently in knowledge scarcity. And so we have been privileged to have a hell of a lot of knowledge. And now the knowledge is available to everyone, and we live in knowledge abundance. So our superpower is no longer being a privileged expert of scientific facts. Our superpower now is empathy and human connection and being truly customer-centric.
Comment there?
I just want to ask, Gudrun, you said something very interesting about certain customers wanting their pets to share their ethics with regards to, the somewhat extreme example of a cat owner feeding their cat a vegetarian or vegan diet when it's not really carnivore. And you also said that customer-centric means enabling the customer needs. So if that customer's need is for their cat, say, to share their ethics to have a vegan diet, let's say, that's then even might say to them, well, no, that's not particularly healthy for your cat, but that remains their need. So to follow to its logical conclusion, therefore, in being customer-centric, you must enable that customer's need. That is their need for their cat to share their ethics. Therefore, you must support their choice to feed their cat that diet.
No, you don't take it to the absolute extreme, because we're a welfare-focused profession without a doubt. But being truly customer-centric is understanding the need. It's not saying they come in and say, I want to feed my dog this, and you say, that's not a good idea because they're going to get this, this, and this, and therefore don't do it, and shutting down the discussion. If you can open the discussion up about, well, actually, I want to do sustainability, I want to do this. Well, have you looked at actually other ways of doing sustainability? It might include meat, but we can look at other ways of doing it, because ultimately, pet food isn't a privileged act of veterinary surgery. They can walk out of your door and go and get the advice from somebody on the internet and do it even worse. But if we have the conversation, you might get 20% of the time the cat is fed the meat. You might get it in for the test to help them. You can help them do what they want to do. You shut down the argument, they're gone.
Okay, more opinions from the floor.
Does just for clarity, not pro or anti-corporate, but with a lot of the corporate practices we have, there's this sort of influx of KPIs and OKRs, whatever you go to, sort of parameters are for a practice, but does the nature of having a performance-related practice turnover have an impact on us as a profession being customer-centric because of we need to prescribe X, we need to do Y?
Lynne wants to take that one.
I'll take that, surprisingly enough. And part of what I was going to say, and maybe I'm going to say it now, is that my belief has always been actually that we should be pet-centric. And the business, the corporate that I ran, it was based on that philosophy, that the thing that came first was the animal. We looked after the animal, we did the right thing for the animal, and my belief is if you do that, the business follows. It's not about how many T-scales you do. The question is, how many dogs or cats needed teeth scale? If you didn't do it, you're not doing the right thing for the animal. If you did it when they didn't need it, you're doing it for the KPIs. So the business and corporates and any business, because it's not just corporates, you know, people who have private practices run on KPIs too. They run on profit the same as anybody else does. So it's not just the corporate, it's everybody. And for me, what it's all about is the animal. Look after the animal. You can look after your clients, obviously, as well, but if you look after and I'll talk maybe a little bit about that when I talk, but I think that's what it's about. It's not about KPIs. Do the right thing, and the KPIs follow.
Yes, one there.
So Kathy shared US data that suggested that more pets don't go to the vet than do go to the vet in any given time period. Question to the panel: would a change in our customer centricity enable us to engage with an unmedicalised, maybe, group of animals that have a welfare need that is not being served by our current behaviour?
Quick response to that one, anybody?
Yeah, I do. I think if we were, I think customer is the right word. And I've been around the houses with this, and I've called it client, and I've been told off, and I think customer is the right thing because they're buying a service from us. They still want that warm feeling of buying it from us. They want the trust, they want everything else, but the warm feeling is the pet, and it's about our interaction with them to get the pet better, but it's about that service. You know, I am a pet owner, and I go into our practice, and it's anything but customer-centric. It's hard work. So I don't go very often. I try and avoid it. But if we were welcoming and engaging, and we understood what I want. So I know what Lynne was saying, and I agree and disagree. You know, this is the thing. You're going to get 4 vets on here. We'll agree on some stuff, and then you'll get 5 opinions out of us. But I don't agree that if you don't do the dental on the cat or dog that needs it, you've failed the cat or dog, because what's the situation around that as well? If the animal genuinely only has a pot of money and actually it needs treatment for something else, and the dental can wait for a bit and you can do that later, you haven't failed it. If you don't do something around a diabetic because you can't do gold standard because the owner's got dementia, and actually what's more important is that pet and that owner is together for a week, that's not failing the pet. That's working out the best environment for the pet. So I think if we can shape that, and we do see it as a customer service, I think we will bring these people back in.
Okay, quick comment.
Only that I would just semi-question the data. I don't think we can extrapolate from the US to the UK. It's so easy for a person in the UK. There are surveys out there where I think OnSwitch have done them. People said, I don't need to register with the vet because I can just turn up when I need to with my cat. And we do have a different... I thoroughly understand what you mean, but I don't think we have the right data in the UK for it.
Okay, comment here?
Well, that's another point on this proposition. Jan van FE. I think it's indeed important to speak with the animal owners and to try to understand all their needs. On the other hand, I think there's more than the owner and the animal that's in your practice at this moment. I think being a liberal profession, you always have to keep in mind that it is the interest of the individual client or the individual customer and society at large. And that's what you have to balance. And it can be that these two interests conflict. And it can be that you come to a point that you have to say to the customer, I'm very sorry, but I cannot do this.
Yeah, okay, good.
Can I just, on one tiny point, I totally agree with you actually, and that happens very much on the hearth. But I would say if you are customer-centric and you've built up that relationship of trust, of understanding their needs, then those kind of difficult conversations are a lot easier to have.
I'll take 2 more comments before we go to the second speakers. Yeah, one there.
Thanks. Yeah, just a quick comment on about vets no longer having privileged access to expert information. I'm not really sold on that idea, because despite most information, because I think the abundance of information has led to the phenomenon of Dr. Google, which has the potential to do more harm than good.
Okay, very good comment. And there's one somewhere here, yeah?
It was similar to the previous comment about public good, and if livestock diseases are to be eradicated, and in a kind of public good perspective, where the customer centricity might lie in individual farmers when they might have to cull asymptomatic cattle and be penalised in that way for public good.
Okay, very good comment. Another one, and then I'll go to the speakers.
Thank you. I think the last speaker kind of hit the nail on the head. We do have a scenario where there will be free rider situations where the customer is not exactly right, in the sense that there would be their requests or demands might not be what's best for the animal in some cases, or what's best for the society. And a lot of the vaccinations we have in epizootic diseases have nothing to do with customer centricity. They are dependent on the appropriate value proposition for those particular situations. And so we should be looking at who's the stakeholder of importance at this stage and what are their views as far as that's concerned.
Excellent point. Thank you very much. Okay, I have to close it there because of time.
Can I just come back one point? I know.
You get the prize for...
I know. Well, anyone who knows me knows I can talk. And I totally agree with that. And the social situation goes across human medicine as well.
I think you should give these lot 5 votes because Gudrun hugs the mic.
I know. I can talk for Britain. I've got to go soon, so you'll get rid of me. That goes across anything. You look at EU exit, and if we do, and this is not a political comment, but if we do have problems in getting supermarkets, the government might put a cap on it, or a supermarket might put a cap on it, you no longer become customer-centric. There will always be situations when a social situation overrides the customer. I'm not going to disagree. And if you look at what's happening in human medicine, and they're debating mandatory vaccinations for children, and there's evidence that doesn't work. Because actually what you're better doing is bringing people along and educating people to do the right thing and the reasons why it. I'm not saying that mandatory doesn't always work, but that is not always what we should be doing.
Okay, I'll stop it there. I'll ask Ebony to take the floor and be the second speaker on the motion. Do you want to sit there?
Yeah, some really interesting points, and like we've all said, it's hard actually, because I think you can kind of do both sides. But I think we do have a privileged position with regards to I think everyone has a privileged position now with regards to knowledge, and you are right in that we have expertise to kind of sift out the evidence from the myths. But a quote that really stuck with me is, if you're not serving your customer, and this comes back to Adrian's point, if you're not serving your customer, then you're serving others. By that I mean, especially as a horse vet, if I'm not actually really being customer centric, they have spent more time with their homeopath, their Reiki person, and everyone else. And so if I am not serving them and listening to them, I am serving other populations of people who are gaining from that trust, I would say. So.
Okay, that's your final message? Okay. Lynne.
Okay, as I said earlier on, madness to ask me to speak against a motion on customer service, because as far as I'm concerned, you cannot be a vet unless you are customer-centric and look at your clients, and that's what helps your business. Without your clients, where are you? You have no good business, as Gudrun said. But I like to look at it a little bit sideways as well and add something, and maybe what I want is the motion with an addendum to it, so you can vote on my addendum rather than just the motion, because really I don't expect you to vote against looking at customers as being quite important to our business. It would be a bit daft, but let's add something to it. So I was reading actually yesterday in the Times, a really interesting, or in The Economist actually, an interesting article about Julian Richer of Richer Sounds, and his philosophy is very much customers and the people he employs and how important those are. So that's one of the things I want to look at. If I take personally, I became a vet because of the way that my family pet, the first memory I have at 3 is this dog arriving. And when he got ill and he was taken to the vet and had to be put to sleep eventually, the way that the vet treated us as a family, the way that my pet was treated, and in particular how my father was treated when Bengo, the dog, was being put to sleep. And he was so traumatized, my dad, that he didn't go near a vet's for years and years and years. And I thought at that time, as a 13-year-old, that I could do better, that my dog deserved better, and my family deserved better. And I decided for that reason to become a vet. And that is how I have done all my veterinary, in that the pet deserves better and deserves the best that they can afford. Because I agree with Gudrun, you can't offer everything to everybody because they can't afford it. But you've got to give people options as well. So what I want to say is that in the business, as I say, that I have led, and I mentioned this earlier on, it's very much been about the pet first. Look and do the right thing. And I'm only talking about pets here. I'm not talking about cattle and horses. But if you look after that animal and do the very best thing and the right thing for it, actually, your clients will be happy. You may not always do exactly what they want, and sometimes you have to convince them actually that what they want is not in the best interest of the animal. And that's why I think actually the welfare does come into this motion, because it is about the welfare of animals in how we do and how we treat them. And so for me, you look after the pet, you look after the client, and actually that helps your staff and the teams that work, whether it's the nurses or the receptionists or the vets. Because if you're all heading to do the right thing for the pet, the right thing for the client, your teams actually are extremely happy in where they work. And if they're happy in where they work, my goodness, does your business thrive. So that you don't have to worry about the KPIs, you worry about what you're doing, what you're presenting to the client, what you're presenting to the animal, what you're presenting to your staff, and then you get a very good business. But of course, what I don't believe in now that we're so technologically moving forward, that just because we can do some things, we should always do them. But that's probably a different argument, but it's certainly something listening to today and the technology that's coming, whether or not we should always head down the modern and the different way, or whether sometimes we have to think about different areas. So I know that with clients, if you go by what they want, sometimes I've had clients, and I'm sure most of you have, who've come in, they want to remortgage their houses, they've wanted to postpone weddings, they've wanted to not have their holiday, they've wanted to not send their children off somewhere because they wanted to have a treatment for a dog or a cat that's actually only going to prolong that animal's life by maybe 3 months. Now, I think I have a responsibility both to the animal, because actually that's not in the best interest of the animal. It's certainly not in the best interest of every client to actually remortgage their house that they may not be able to pay back for or borrow money. So I think we have a responsibility of vets in looking after our customers or our clients, that we can't be truly down the route of everything they want, they get. And taking that further, one of the things that we talked about is, that has been mentioned as well, is that we have a very stressed, we're always being told we have a very stressed, and I believe it, people working with us within the profession. And it doesn't seem to matter that actually, and I'd probably say this, maybe I need a tin hat, to say that vets are actually working less hours than they've ever worked. It doesn't feel like that when you're in practice, but it is the truth when you look at the data. Seems strange, but we are stressed in the profession. And if we want to be completely customer-centric and totally there, what was said before, we could be people might want our vaccinations at 3 in the morning because it suits them, or they've just come off night shift, or they're just going on to night shift. So I think we have to be very careful in what we mean by customer-centric in going forward. Now, work-life balance is extremely important, and I'm very aware of that. I have 3 children, which I brought up, and I always worked full-time. So I think we need to be careful in moving forward how we do it. And I think what we've done within the profession, which has been great, has been having new services like the out-of-hours providers that are all out there. That helps in one way and actually helps the customer-centric of it. But that sort of work is not for everybody. Not everybody wants to work at night. Not everybody can work at night. And actually, the research shows that actually people working shift work and working at night is actually detrimental to their health. So we've got a lot of questions to answer in how we should go forward. And I think what we need to remember is, yes, the client is always the client. They're the ones that pay your wages in the end. But they're not always right. And I think that's the other thing we must remember. Keeping animals alive just for the sake of the owner, that's not always right either. We can be successful in businesses, and we are successful in businesses, by not just listening to the customer, but by listening to our staff, listening to the animals that we treat. And having gone through today and listening to all the amazing technologies that are coming, and I think it's absolutely brilliant to look at it. And we have to modernize as a profession. We have to move forward. We have to do other things because, as the saying goes, if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. And I don't think that's where we want to be in 5 or 10 years' time. So we need to change. We need to do things. But let's be customer-centered, and let's make that technology work for us to help us to move forward. But let's get the teams to work along with the clients, because it is a teamwork with the client. You've got to bring your clients with you, but you've got to bring your teams with you as well, because otherwise you won't have a successful business. And I think if we do that, we can continue to have the trust that clients have in us, because I think they do have trust in us if we communicate with them, talk with them, bring them with us and let them understand why we're treating them. And then we can actually lead, and we can be proactive in what we do and not be reactive and be the fire brigade service that we used to be. So I want us to thrive. I want us to remain to be customer-centric. I don't want us to be all-encompassing, and I think we need to take other things into account. So I'd like you to vote against the motion with my addendum towards pets and the staff and the people that we work with to make their life good as well as the customer. Thank you.
Okay. I won't grant a rebuttal, mostly because I'll never be able to stop Gudrun. So I'll go straight to a vote. So, supporting the motion. Against the motion? Thank you. Anything you want to say, Anthony?
24-14.
And before? Wow. So it's a win for these guys because they got the motion. It's a win for these guys because they swayed the audience. Couldn't be better than that. I would like to say sincere thanks to the audience. You were incredibly interactive, and that was what we wanted. And a really sincere thanks to the speakers who were excellent. Thank you very much.